whispers crawl beneath the skin, a shadow's grin.
The finger was still warm when Eva slipped it into her pocket. Not a real finger, of course, the reliquary, a tarnished silver case the size of a cigarette lighter, supposedly containing the finger bone of some 4th century doubter. She'd been staring at it all afternoon in the cathedral's excavation pit, cataloguing fragments of medieval pottery and Renaissance coins, but this was different. This was valuable. This was hers. The other archaeologists were packing up for the day. Dr. Laurent was arguing with the site foreman about extending their permit. No one was watching. Eva's hand closed around the cold metal, and she pulled it free from the clay, brushed it against her jeans, and let it disappear into her jacket pocket. Her heart was hammering. She'd never stolen anything before, not like this, not from a dig site, but the university had cut her funding again. Her position was temporary. This could change everything. One good sale to a private collector and she could finance her own excavation. She could prove herself. The hotel room was cheap and smelled like bleach and old carpet. Eva locked the door behind her and pulled the reliquary from her pocket, setting it on the bathroom counter under the harsh fluorescent light. The silver was dark with age, almost black in places. Ornate Latin script wound around its surface. Digitus increduli, finger of the doubter. She turned on the tap and wet a washcloth, carefully wiping away centuries of dirt. The metal gleamed underneath, revealing an intricately engraved scene. A man kneeling before an altar, reaching for something. Angels with swords descending from above. And on the reverse side, the same man, but his face was twisted, skull-like, his mouth open in a scream. Eva held it up to the light, examining her face in its curved, reflective surface. Her own features stared back at her, warped and stretched by the convex metal. She looked tired, guilty. Her eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. Then, for just a moment, less than a second, her reflection's eyes turned completely black. A dark fluid streaked down its cheeks like tears of oil. Eva dropped the reliquary. It clattered into the sink. As she blinked hard, rubbing her eyes, just fatigue. She'd been working 16-hour days for 3 weeks. The lighting in here was terrible. She was seeing things. She picked up the reliquary again. Her reflection looked normal. Tired, yes, but normal. She laughed at herself, a shaky sound in the small bathroom. Stress, that's all it was. Eva wrapped the reliquary in a hand towel and tucked it into her overnight bag, then collapsed onto the bed without even taking off her shoes. Sleep didn't come easy. When it finally did, she dreamed of fingers. Hundreds of them, pointing at her from the darkness, accusing. The next morning, the guilt hit her like a physical weight. What had she done? This wasn't her. She'd spent years studying archaeological ethics, condemning treasure hunters and artifact smugglers, and now she was one of them. Worse, she'd stolen from a sacred site. Whether she believed in the religious significance or not, it mattered to the people whose history she was supposed to be protecting. She had to take it back. Eva dressed quickly and grabbed her bag. She'd return it today, slip it back into the excavation when no one was looking. Say she'd found it in a different quadrant if anyone noticed. She could fix this. But as she passed the bathroom mirror, something made her stop. Her reflection was there, of course, doing exactly what she was doing. Except it wasn't. Not quite. The movements were a fraction of a second off. When Eva raised her hand to her face, her reflection did too, but just a beat too late, like a video with bad sync. Eva froze. Her reflection froze too, but its expression was different. While Eva's face showed confusion and growing fear, the reflection's mouth curved into the faintest smile. She stepped closer to the mirror. The reflection stepped closer too, perfectly synchronized now. It looked normal again. Just her face, her tired eyes, her uncombed hair. She was losing it. The stress was making her paranoid. Eva grabbed her bag and headed for the door. In the mirror's edge, she could have sworn she saw her reflection stay behind, for just a moment before following. The cathedral was even more imposing in daylight. Gothic spires reached toward the grey sky like accusing fingers. Eva made her way around to the excavation site, but there were too many people. Dr. Laurent was there early, along with 3 graduate students and the cathedral's curator, Father Matthias. She couldn't return it now, not without being seen. She'd have to wait, come back tonight when the site was closed. Eva spent the day in the university library, trying to research the reliquary. Digitus increduli, the finger of the doubter. She found references in several medieval texts. The story varied, but the core remained the same. A 4th century deacon named Cassian had attempted to steal a holy relic from a martyred saint. The moment he touched it, he was struck by a divine curse. He was condemned to see his own sin made manifest, to watch his own corruption reflected back at him until he was driven mad. He'd torn out his own eyes rather than see it anymore, but even blind, he could still feel its gaze. The relic he tried to steal, his own finger, cut from his living hand and preserved in a silver case as a warning to others. Eva felt sick. It was just a legend, superstitious medieval propaganda to scare people away from tomb robbing. It didn't mean anything. But her hands were shaking as she turned the pages. She found one more reference in a barely legible 16th century manuscript. Whoever bears the Digitus increduli will see the truth of their own heart. What is hidden will be made visible. What is denied will be made flesh. There is no escape save through confession and acceptance. The library's fluorescent lights flickered. Eva glanced up at the darkened windows that lined the walls. In each one, her reflection sat at identical tables, reading identical books. But in the nearest window, her reflection wasn't looking at the book. It was looking directly at her. Eva slammed the manuscript shut and gathered her things. She needed to get back to the hotel, lock herself in her room until tonight when she could return this cursed thing. But the mirrors were everywhere. Bathroom mirrors, shop windows, the polished chrome of parked cars, and in each one her reflection was wrong. Sometimes it was subtle. A different angle to her head, eyes that didn't blink when she blinked, but sometimes it was obvious. In one shop window, her reflection was crying, thick black tears streaming down its face while Eva's own cheeks remained dry. In another, her reflection's mouth was moving, forming words Eva couldn't hear, its expression twisted with rage. By the time she got back to her hotel room, Eva was running. She slammed the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. The room was dim. She'd left the curtains closed that morning. She reached for the light switch, then stopped. In the darkness, she could just make out the bathroom. The door was ajar, and light from the gap beneath showed a sliver of white tile. And in that sliver, she saw movement, a shadow that wasn't hers. Eva's hand found the light switch. The overhead bulb flickered on, harsh and bright. The bathroom door was open wider than she remembered. She could see the mirror above the sink. Her reflection stood there, waiting. She watched as it smiled, not her smile, a cruel, knowing smile. Then it moved. While Eva stood frozen by the door, her reflection in the mirror reached out and picked up her toothbrush. Slowly, deliberately, it began writing on the mirror's surface with the toothpaste. Eva felt her own hand twitch, felt an almost overwhelming urge to do the same, but she clenched her fist and stayed still. The reflection wrote an inverted cross, then another, then words in Latin that Eva recognized from her research: sacrilegium, profanatio peccatum. A sacrilege, desecration, sin. The reflection turned to face her fully. It pointed at Eva with one hand, then it pointed at itself with the other. Then it switched, pointing at itself first, then at Eva. Back and forth, the meaning clear. It wanted to trade places. Eva ran from the bathroom, slamming the door behind her, but there were other reflective surfaces. The television screen, dark and glassy. The window overlooking the parking lot, the screen of her phone. In each one, the double was there, watching, waiting, pointing. She grabbed the reliquary from her bag, The silver was ice cold. She had to get rid of it. Had to return it now, tonight, consequences be damned. But as she clutched it, Eva felt something shift inside her. A compulsion, dark and hungry. She looked down at the hotel Bible in the drawer of the nightstand, and her hands moved without her consent. She opened the drawer, pulled out the book. Her fingers found the ribbon bookmark and began tearing. The sound of ripping paper filled the room. She watched herself do it, horrified, unable to stop. Page after page, torn free and scattered across the floor. When she finally regained control, her hands were shaking and her breath came in gasps. What was happening to her? This wasn't her. She didn't want to do these things. But another part of her whispered that maybe she did. Maybe this is who she'd always been. Someone who took what she wanted. Someone who didn't care about rules or sanctity or other people's beliefs. Someone who saw the world as something to be exploited for her own gain. The reflection in the television screen smiled wider. Eva didn't sleep that night. She sat in the corner farthest from any reflective surface, the reliquary clutched in both hands, waiting for dawn. But even without mirrors, she could feel it. The presence of her double, circling like a predator, getting closer. At some point, she must have dozed off because she woke to find herself standing in front of the bathroom mirror again. She had no memory of walking there. The mirror was covered in more symbols now, drawn in something dark and sticky. Her own blood, she realized. Her fingers were bleeding. She'd been scratching the symbols into her skin while she slept, marking herself. In the mirror, her double's expression was triumphant. Eva screamed and smashed her fist into the glass. It cracked in a spiderweb pattern, but didn't break. In each fragment, her reflections smiled back at her from a dozen angles. She had to end this, now. The cathedral was locked, but Eva knew where the site supervisor kept the spare key. She let herself into the excavation area as the first light of dawn began to grey the sky. The pit yawned before her, full of shadows and centuries of buried secrets. She climbed down carefully, the reliquary in her pocket, and made her way to where she'd found it. She'd put it back in the exact same spot, bury it again, pretend it had never been disturbed. But as she knelt in the dirt, she heard footsteps behind her. She spun around, expecting Dr. Laurent or one of the security guards. No one was there, just the excavation equipment casting long shadows in the pre-dawn light, and yet she could see movement, in the chrome surface of a surveying tool, in a puddle of yesterday's rain, in the glass face of a measuring device. Her reflection was climbing out. Not metaphorically, literally. It was pulling itself free from the reflective surface, emerging like something being born, slick and dark. An oily, shadow version of herself, solid and real, and moving with predatory grace. Eva ran. She scrambled out of the pit and through the side entrance into the cathedral proper. The vast space was dark except for the pre-dawn light filtering through stained glass windows. She ran up the center aisle toward the altar, her footsteps echoing off stone. Behind her, she heard other footsteps, identical to her own but wrong somehow, the rhythm just slightly off. She reached the altar and spun around. The shadow double stood at the end of the aisle, silhouetted against the colored light from the windows. It was her height, her build, her face, but made of something that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its eyes were completely black. Eva pulled the reliquary from her pocket and held it up like a talisman. The double tilted its head, amused. Then it began to walk forward. "Stay back," Eva shouted, her voice bouncing off the vaulted ceiling. "This is yours. I'm returning it. Take it and leave me alone." The double kept walking. It didn't want the reliquary. It wanted her. Eva backed up until she felt the altar behind her. To her left, the great golden altarpiece gleamed in the dim light. It was massive, covered in religious scenes rendered in hammered gold, and it was reflective. In its surface, Eva could see her reflection, and she could see the double approaching, but she could also see something else. The reflection wasn't afraid. It wasn't running. It looked sad, tired, resigned. The double reached the altar steps. It raised one hand toward Eva, fingers outstretched. Not to grab or hurt, but to touch, to merge. Eva understood then, with horrible clarity, what the medieval texts had meant. The curse wasn't the double. The double was a symptom. The reliquary wasn't creating her darkness. It was revealing it, showing her what had always been there, hidden beneath layers of professional ethics and good intentions and self-justification. The greed, the selfishness, the willingness to betray her own principles for personal gain, the casual dismissal of other people's beliefs as less important than her ambitions, the pride that made her think she deserved special treatment, special exceptions. This shadow self wasn't invading her. It had always been part of her. She'd just been very good at not looking at it. The double stood before her now. Its face was her face, but honest in its darkness. No pretense, no lies, just the raw truth of her worst impulses given form. Eva couldn't fight this. You can't fight yourself. You can only accept or deny, and denial had brought her here. She looked at the reliquary in her shaking hands. The silver was warm now, almost hot. She could see her own reflection in its curved surface, and for once it showed her clearly. Not the professional she pretended to be, not the ethical archaeologist she claimed to be, just Eva, flawed, greedy, afraid, and human. "I'm sorry," she whispered, not to God, not to the cathedral, to herself. "I'm sorry I stole you," she said to the reliquary. "I'm sorry I justified it. I'm sorry I thought I was better than the people I condemn. I'm sorry I've been lying to myself about who I am." The words came faster now, years of suppressed guilt and self-deception pouring out. "I'm selfish. I put my career above everything else. I judge other people while excusing my own faults. I think the rules don't apply to me. I take and take and take and convince myself it's okay because I'm educated, because I'm preserving history, because I deserve it more." Tears were streaming down her face now. The double stood motionless, watching. "I've been so focused on what I want that I forgot why I started this work in the first place. It wasn't about me. It was about protecting the past, honoring it, but I betrayed that the moment I put this in my pocket." Eva clutched the reliquary to her chest. It was burning hot now, but she didn't let go. "I see it now. I see what I've become. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The double's posture softened. Its aggressive stance melted away. It stood there, and slowly, almost hesitantly, it reached out its hand again. Not to attack, not to drag her into darkness. Just to touch the glass from the other side. Eva looked up at the golden altarpiece. Her reflection was crying. The double was crying. The same tears, the same pain, the same recognition. She raised her own hand and pressed it to the gold surface. On the other side, the double's hand met hers, warm where she expected cold, real where she expected shadow. The moment their hands touched, the reliquary in Eva's other hand flared with heat. She heard a sound like metal sealing, a final click of a lock closing. The silver case grew suddenly cold again, inert. The double began to fade, not disappearing but receding, sinking back into the reflection, but its face changed as it did. The anger was gone, the menace was gone. Instead, it looked at Eva with something like understanding, like forgiveness. Then it was just her reflection again, crying against the golden altar. Eva sank to her knees, still clutching the reliquary. She stayed there for a long time, until the cathedral's morning bell rang, and she heard Father Matthias unlocking the main doors. She stood on shaky legs and placed the reliquary carefully on the altar. Then she walked down the aisle, her footsteps no longer echoed by a second set. Father Matthias found her sitting in one of the pews, staring at nothing. "My child, are you all right?" he asked gently. Eva looked up at him. "I need to make a confession," she said. "Not the religious kind, the legal kind. I stole an artifact from the excavation site. It's on the altar. I'm turning myself in." The consequences were severe. She lost her position at the university. Her academic reputation was destroyed. Dr. Laurent refused to speak to her. She faced criminal charges, though Father Matthias and the cathedral ultimately chose not to press them after she paid a substantial fine and agreed to community service hours. Eva moved back to her hometown and took a job teaching high school history. Not prestigious, not what she'd dreamed of, but honest work. Months passed, then a year. She rebuilt her life piece by piece, without the foundation of lies she'd constructed before. It was harder, it was humbler, but it was real. One evening, she was invited to give a guest lecture at a local community college. Nothing fancy, just an introduction to archaeological ethics for a continuing education class. 20 people in a fluorescent-lit classroom, most of them older than her. They're out of curiosity rather than career ambition. Eva talked about the importance of preserving context, about how every artifact has a story, and removing it from where it was found destroys part of that story forever, about the responsibility archaeologists have to the past and to the communities whose heritage they study. And she talked about how easy it is to justify taking what isn't yours, how everyone thinks they're the exception, how the best way to protect against that temptation is to be honest about your own capacity for selfishness. The students listened. A few took notes. It wasn't groundbreaking. It wasn't career-making, but it was true and it mattered. Afterwards, Eva packed up her materials and headed out into the evening. She passed by a classroom window and caught sight of her reflection in the glass. For a moment, just a moment, the reflection winked at her. Not maliciously, not threateningly, just a small knowing wink, a reminder. Eva smiled back. Then she adjusted her bag and walked on into the night, her reflection following at exactly the same pace, exactly the same rhythm, both of them moving together now, integrated at last. The shadow self would always be there, the capacity for darkness, for selfishness, for betrayal, but it didn't control her anymore. She'd looked at it, acknowledged it, and chosen to live with full awareness of what she was capable of. That was the only way to be truly free. Not by defeating your demons, but by learning to walk with them, eyes open, honest about every step. The reliquary remained on the cathedral altar, sealed and silent. Occasionally, someone would pick it up to clean it or catalogue it, and they'd see their own face reflected in its tarnished silver surface. And for just a moment, they'd wonder if the eyes looking back were really their own. But the reliquary kept its secrets. It had done its work with Eva. The next doubter would have to find their own path to truth. In the window of the community college, Eva's reflection watched her walk away. It raised one hand in farewell. Eva raised hers in return, then turned the corner and disappeared into the evening. The reflection stood alone for a moment longer, then it too turned and walked away, its footsteps echoing on the other side of the glass, forever synchronized, forever separate, forever one and the same.